All right, we're here. Welcome into Sports Bit. Betting Insight today, Tuesday, March 15th. Paulie and Teddy, deep dive today. How to handicap the NIT and what to look for. Big game breakdown, Vandy, Wichita State, and the Clippers, and the Spurs. We start with a fresh take, and we'll get to the brackets here in a second. And, of course, wrong sides. A lot of those last night. Teddy, this should be good. You take it away with a fresh take / rant.
Yeah. I mean, let's start real simple, okay? I hope you like the show. We've been doing it for a couple of months now. We're not getting the audience that we were hoping for. Now, look, nobody expects miracles overnight. But the bottom line is this. 3-digit viewership counts aren't going to cut it. So I'm going to ask you nicely. Tell your fucking friends about SportsBit. Please. You're getting betting information here that you really can't get anywhere else. Truly unique info. As long as Paulie and I can keep it mildly entertaining, you should be back here every single day. If you like it, tell your friends. If you hate it, tell your friends. Please share this link. It's March Madness. We're breaking down NIT, CBI, CIT, the big dance in ways that you're not getting anywhere else. Please help us help you. Share the show. Tell people about it. Thank you. That's all I'm going to say for today.
Thank you. Don't make me pull a Kramer. Please. Get down on my hands and knees. I'll second that about you're not going to get these numbers and information anywhere else. A sports bit moment of silence. Hey, the Rockets had the lead at the end of the first quarter. They led Memphis 34-22. First time they led at the end of the first quarter since January 30th. That's 16 games and 7 times they were a favorite, Teddy.
Yeah, but of course, it must be noted that for the full season, James Harden had outscored the entire Memphis starting lineup. That's what the Grizz are rolling with right now. So the fact that Houston got a win and cover, and covered a first quarter, something that, as you mentioned, they haven't done since January against Memphis. They're supposed to be doing that. That being said, Rockets are definitely playing better basketball right about now.
Yes, all right, wrong sides. Plenty of these last night. The Pistons, what a no-show against the Wizards. They get blown out by 40. The Hornets, we talk them up, and they had that great streak, and they lost at home to the Mavs, and that's a bad loss by the Raptors. They're trying to get the 1 seed, steal it from the Cavs. They also won the season series. They lose at home.
Oh, yeah, what about the Grizzlies? I mean, Memphis, we talked about Houston leading after 1. Another no-show for the Grizzlies. That team's fallen on real hard times in recent weeks. I had a big bet on the Blazers last night, Paul. That was a wrong side. Portland basically a no-show in Oklahoma City. They got destroyed. And the Cavs, they took some money at Utah. Then they didn't lead at halftime. They certainly didn't lead at the end of the game. Cleveland loses outright. Second night of back-to-backs wasn't a great spot for the Cavs. Nonetheless, they were one of at least 6 wrong sides in the NBA last night, which is pretty high on a night that didn't have a whole lot of games. And not much for bad beats last night, however.
Yeah. All right, let's talk tourney. This is not ATS. We'll give you one shocker out of each region and who we expect to win the region. We'll go rapid fire here with the brackets. Couple days away. You got the play-in games coming up, and then we really get down to business on Thursday. Teddy, let's start in the East. I'll give you a couple shockers here. I'll start with Chattanooga. 29 wins, won the Southern League, won at Dayton. Good team. They can give Indiana, they can be a headache for Indiana, and they can pull an upset in that one. Everyone's talking about, Indiana, Kentucky in the second round. Not so fast. We could get an upset there. And Stephen F. Austin, Brad Underwood, terrific coach, 1 conference loss in 3 seasons. It's a tough matchup because they're playing Press Virginia. But this is a team that beat VCU a couple years ago in the tournament. Stephen F. Austin won by 40 in the semis and won their championship game by 20. 2 easy wins. Like Stephen F. Austin a lot, Teddy.
Yeah, I'm with you on Stephen F. Austin. Lumberjacks are a team that I think they match up fairly well with West Virginia. Remember, in the Big 12 tourney, West Virginia had such an advantage. They were playing against all of these tired foes, playing 2nd and 2 and 3rd and 3. And when you're tired, you turn the ball over. If you don't turn the ball over against West Virginia, they are beatable. And again, when you're looking for a first-round shocker, look to Vegas. Don't look to the talking heads. Vegas will tell you what dogs are live. They'll tell you what dogs have a chance. And the fact that we're talking about a 14 seed That in some places has been as low as plus 6.5, plus 7, 7.5 the current number now. That's telling me Stephen F. Austin is live in this matchup against a Mountaineer team that may be hard to figure out to put together the type of run this week that they enjoyed last week. But in each region, Paul, we're going to do one shocker. We're going to give our pick to come out, and I'm going to take the North Carolina Tar Heels to come out of the East. As long as that team is hitting perimeter jumpers, when their guards are hitting, they're as good as any squad in the country. And we've seen, I think what we saw in the ACC tournament, the way they were able to beat Virginia at Virginia's pace, I think that bodes well for the Tar Heels moving forward.
Okay, I'll go with Kentucky. Make no mistake about it. The team that wins that Kentucky-North Carolina game is going to win the region. And with Kentucky, as you look at this picture, how often do you get a team that has two potential NBA guards in the backcourt and they're a 4 seed? I mean, come on, look what they did in the SEC tournament, especially on offense, how impressive they were. And in a tournament like this, where you don't have a lot of talented big men, guards can get you through, and guards can win it.
Pretty good guards for Kentucky. Let's go to the South right now. I'll go with my first round shocker, and I'm going to take the Wichita Vanderbilt winner over Arizona. We've talked on this show a number of times how vulnerable the Wildcats are. We saw it in the Pac-12 tournament. I don't think that changes. And, the play-in winner, we've seen them gain momentum and get to the second weekend more than once in recent years. Wichita Vandy winner survives and advances. What do you got for an upset in the first round in the South, Paul?
South Dakota State happens every year, a 12 over a 5, 26-7 on the season. They won the Summit League. 3 guys that score 14 points a game. If it's close, watch out to beat Maryland. 3 guys that average that shoot 80% from the line as well. If it's close, I'll take South Dakota State with that easy 12 over a 5 upset that seems to happen every year.
Yeah, and Paul, you and I both have the same team coming out of the South. That team, of course, the Kansas Jayhawks. Tell them why.
Yep, I just think they're the best team in the country. Self's doing a great job and very impressive that what they win the regular season and the conference tournament. And you just went rapid fire when you're able to knock off all those big teams and great challenges that they face in the Big 12. Best team. Got to win the region, right?
Well, they don't have to, but they're our pick nonetheless. Move to the Midwest right now, shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, what do you got for a first-round upset in the Midwest?
I like Iona, 22-10. A.J. English, 22 points per game. Iona against Iowa State. How about the total on this game as well? Like 170, that high. Iona beat Monmouth twice. If they can knock down their shots and get English going early, this is going to be up and down, chuck and duck, heave and leave. They could pull the upset in Iowa State 2 years in a row. Could be out early.
Yeah, I'm going to look at Gonzaga over Seton Hall. And again, when you're seeing the number 11 seed favored over the 6 seed, it's telling you something. From a spot perspective, this is brutal for Seton Hall. They left it all on the floor last week. They accomplished their goal, had a great weekend. Now, long travel spot, tough game, tough opponent. Wouldn't want to play the Zags in Denver this week. Gonzaga, they too had a pretty good weekend. They've had a little bit more time to recuperate. I'll look for the Zags to pull again, they're going to call it an upset out there in the mainstream world. Here, obviously, we know the Zags are favored, and they're favored for a reason.
Who's coming out of the Midwest?
Oh, Sparty. Sparty's my pick to win it all. Michigan State, I'll
make a case for you.
A string of yarn from all the nets that Tom Izzo has cut down might be long enough to circle the globe. Look at this guy. That's what he does. He cuts down nets, and I think that Michigan State's the team to beat in this region.
I'll make a quick case for Utah, led by Jakob Pertl. They had a fantastic run last year, got hot late going into the tournament, almost beat Duke. They were right there with the controversial finish. They had a good close to the season, went to the Pac, didn't work out in the championship game, run out by Oregon, but a good season here. They can surprise some people. How about Utah to win the Midwest? The West, I think Oklahoma comes out of here, and I know we talked about running out of gas and they don't have the depth. I think Lon Kruger finds a way, and I don't want to go chalk, and no one is picking a 1-seed Oregon.
Yeah, of course not, and that's just the way it is. Oregon's the 1 seed that doesn't deserve to be the 1 seed, and no one's going to pick them. I'll take the number 3 seed here. I think A&M comes out of the region, and I think if we see an A&M Oklahoma game, the Aggies are going to come out on top in that matchup, just like they did when they played in the regular season down in College Station. Texas A&M, I'll give Kentucky credit for those back-to-back threes in overtime with a couple of guards that were completely gassed, draining tough looks with the shot clock winding down. But I am an A&M believer to come out of that region. Of course, from a first-round upset, I mean, this one's as easy as it gets. Number 10 VCU is favored by 4.5 over number 7 Oregon State. They're going to call it an upset in the mainstream world, not here on Sportsbet. Obviously, VCU is, from a bracket perspective, this is all about brackets, the clear choice to make in that decision, because that VCU roster loaded with players that have had postseason success. How many current Oregon State players had even been born the last time the Beavs were in the big dance? How about none?
Very good. I'll go with Northern Iowa to beat Texas. What happens when you bring your A game? Well, they beat North Carolina, they beat Iowa State, and they beat Wichita twice, including on their home floor. Come on. Nobody wins there. Northern Iowa to upset Texas in the West. Up next, big game breakdown. The play-in game. Vandy and Wichita. And we'll get to the Clippers and the Spurs on Sportsbet. Betting Insight today. Back on Sportsbet, Betting Insight today. Time for big game breakdown. Play-in games. Wichita and Vandy in a second. We're not going to do Gulf Coast and Fairleigh Dickinson. Two non-board teams. I saw Gulf Coast play once, Teddy. Sorry, I got nothing for you.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's like people go nuts because it's March Madness. They want to be betting these teams they know nothing about. And if you want to do that, you're an action junkie, knock yourself out. That's not the goal of this show. The goal of this show is to help you pick more winners than losers. And, the two teams, again, they haven't been on the board all year, haven't followed them all year. I have no interest in suddenly trying to learn everything I can about a pair of squads I haven't watched or paid attention to. Bet what you know and what you follow, not random shit. I mean, that's the best advice I can give.
Very good. Wichita, 135 against Vandy. Big experience, big game experience, tournament experience. Look at this graph with Van Vliet and Ron Baker. You can count on these guys in pressure-packed games. Tournament experience, Van Vliet and Baker, 10 games. You see the minutes, 332 and 274. Vandy, 0 games in the tournament, 0 minutes. These guys are used to it. Deep runs, big edge to Wichita there, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, Baker and Van Vliet were on the Wichita State Final Four team from a couple of years back. You don't want to underestimate that duo, but this is a fascinating matchup. I mean, the Shockers, 5-5 straight up in their first 10 games. They're 19-3 since. So clearly, they've gotten better as the season has progressed. And, of course, Wichita is their 5th straight NCAA tournament. From an experience standpoint, look at Kevin Stallings' quote. I think it makes a huge difference. That's what they say about it. That's what they say about experience. You can't teach it. And so, Vandy, so young. That being said, they're also really, really big, Paul. This may be a problem matchup-wise for Wichita State when it comes to the Commodores 7-footers. And really, what are we talking about? 6 guys at 6'8" or taller.
Yes, that's a good point there. So they have could be a lottery pick with Jones, the center. You have Cornette as well. And then they have all those guys you mentioned that are 6'8" or above. Now, the Wichita didn't see that in the Valley, but they had success against Zimmerman with UNLV and also when they went up against Jakob Perl with Utah. So that at least helped them out that they had some decent success when they went up against the big guys. But no doubt, big team and the 2 7-footers could give them some problems.
Yeah, it's interesting to note. Zimmerman held to 11 points and 6 rebounds. That's Steven Zimmerman. He could be a lottery pick coming out of UNLV in 31 minutes. And Jakob Perl, just 11 points and 9 rebounds. He was held to nearly half of his season average, also in 31 minutes. It wasn't a foul trouble situation. The difference in this matchup compared to those two, where Wichita's defense was very effective against the big guys, is that when we're talking about Vandy, it's not one big guy. It's often 2 or 3 on the floor at the same time. Maybe some issues there for the Shockers when it comes to matching up with those big guys.
To the association, the Clippers and the Spurs. Spurs 9 and 200. Nobody's talking about this because it's all Golden State all the time. They've won 41 games in a row. They also could break the Bull streak. They host Golden State on Saturday, and they're getting it done on defense. Number 1 in defensive efficiency and at near historical pace. When you look at this graph, the last 8 seasons, defensive leaders, Spurs 95.5, the 2015 Warriors 98.2. You got the Pacers, the 2011 Bulls, the 2010 Bulls, the the 2009 Hornets, and the 2008 Magic. So just incredible job defensively, and just very impressive when you look at that graphic. But they are struggling on offense, Teddy.
Yeah. And of course, San Antonio looking for their 41st consecutive home win. They haven't won that many in a row.
Did I say that? Say home?
Yeah. No, hey,
Okay,
it's what we do. We don't have teleprompters, bro. We're
Yeah.
going to say stuff wrong.
Thank you.
On occasion. The goal is to correct it before we go off the air. But, when you look at those defensive numbers, again, San Antonio with the second best defensive efficiency numbers in the last 8 years in the NBA. A team that just, they just never get any hype. But Tony Parker and the Spurs offense have really been scuffling in step-up games. When you look at San Antonio's offense against the NBA elite, let's just use January 1st, since the calendar turned to 2016. When we look at the totals, the team totals for the Spurs, they were projected to score 521.5 points in those games. They actually scored 471 points. That's 10 points per game below market average. And we're talking about, not against the weaklings. San Antonio crushes the weaklings. But when we're talking about the truly elite teams, we're talking about teams with a winning percentage 65% or better. That's the Raptors, the Warriors, the Thunder, the Cavs, and yes, the Clippers, who they play today. And of course, let's not forget these two teams met just after the All-Star break. And it was one of those games where San Antonio's offense didn't work against a quality foe. Clips won 105-86 and really ran them out of the gym in that ball game.
Yeah, both teams struggling though. The Spurs 1-5 ATS in March as favorites. Clippers 2-3 straight up the last 5, and they allowed 114 points per game in the 3 losses. That's something to take a look at and worry about if you're with the Clippers or a Clipper fan. Up next, the deep dive. How to bet the NIT. Who's motivated? Who doesn't care? And of course, the play of the day on SportsBit Betting Insight today. Time for the deep dive and the topic of the day. NIT underway. A lot to go over here. We'll go rapid fire. Who wants to be here? Who doesn't care? Who wanted to make the big dance, Teddy? Several different things to look at here, but the biggest thing I would say is motivation.
Yeah. I mean, and when we call it nitpicking, it's not about picking my nose. This is about picking NIT winners. And if there's one sentence to listen to for this entire show, this is that sentence. All right? Some teams are going to come into the NIT with a chip on their shoulder, something to prove. And this is not something you're going to know automatically. You have to read, do your local research, going through the local papers, finding the player quotes. I got 3 teams that are coming out with a chip on their shoulder that have something to prove. Monmouth, Valpo, St. Mary's. These are not disappointed teams. These are angry and motivated teams. Then I got 3 teams whose whole season was based on getting the big dance. None of them made it. They're all in the NIT. These are clear bet against teams. San Diego State, Ohio State, New Mexico State. If you do nothing but go bet on the 3 bet on teams and bet against the 3 bet against teams, I expect that you'll make money, and those bet on teams may be good to ride for more than one game.
Okay, how important is travel here? Because the schedule's released late Sunday night.
It's huge. I mean, a lot of times teams don't find out until late Sunday night where they're going to go. And then it can be a real scramble for some of the road teams to get to places. Remember, they've never been there before in a lot of these spots. And some of these programs, particularly in the lesser tournaments, they don't have the budget for charters. They're taking public transport or they're busing, and those are not necessarily good spots. So you do want to do your research when it comes to travel situations, particularly with some of these more difficult trips.
Okay, let's discuss what's going on with Florida. They're renovating their home arena, so they're going to be on the road. But they're taking on North Florida, and it's spring break, baby. Party time. Let's have a few beers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny. The road team is likely to have more fans. I mean, most of the fans in most of these venues obviously are going to be rooting for the home team. But you've got a ton of Florida alumni in Jacksonville. It's only 70 miles from campus, and it's the middle of spring break. I would think that North Florida is going to be at a crowd disadvantage in their own venue for this particular ball game, Paul, and that's certainly an issue. But we also have to talk about the fact that and this is one thing that I forgot to mention earlier, but it's a key point. We talk about the teams that don't want to be there, the dead teams. All of that changes after the first round.
Okay, good point. Very
If
good.
San Diego State manages to survive in advance, or if New Mexico State survives in advance, or Ohio State survives in advance, and they get out of that first, oh man, we didn't make the big dance, then all of a sudden, a trip to Madison Square Garden is a legitimate motivator. And when you have these teams that survive in advance early, sometimes you're thinking, oh, they're still bet against. Well, once you can start to smell it, smell the garden, all of a sudden the motivation comes back in a big hurry, Paul. But we also got to talk about the spring break schedules, because we have to know which schools are going to have their normal fans in attendance and which schools nobody's going to be there because everyone's on spring break.
Yeah, don't expect a typical Ohio State crowd for this one. Home team spring break schedules: Ohio State, North Florida, Monmouth, and GW. Next week, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and Washington. So here's where you're right with the home court disadvantage. There's no energy in the building. There's not many students, and that works against the home team, as they aren't really up for the game because there's nobody there.
Yeah, for sure. And again, when we look at let's just go back to the Florida example for a minute, okay? All the Florida games are going to be on the road. Obviously, they're road chalk in the first round. So you wonder about a team like Florida. You win that first game, and you're excited, but will making another trip after the initial one just down the road take away some of the motivation? That's definitely something of a concern. But these spring break issues, and again, there's 4 of them this week. The Buckeyes. I don't know what North Florida's school name is. Exactly. I don't know. Yeah. The Colonials and, of course, Monmouth. Those are 4 schools that this week will not have the normal home court edge that they would have at another time of the year. You have to factor the lack of students into the equation.
All right. A lot of fun there, and this could be wild with the NIT. It's money time. Where are we going with the play of the day?
Well, we have to go to the Columbus for this one. And let's take a look at the play of the day. Akron plus the 5 against Ohio State. How hard do you think Jake KREZTER and Akron are going to go after this one? Look at some of these quotes from the Zip. Here's the senior starter for Akron. It's every kid's dream from Ohio to go to Ohio State, play at the Schottenstein, and beat them on their home court. You ask anyone growing up, most of the time they're Ohio State fans for the most part. They don't get recruited by Ohio State. Guys take that as a chip on their shoulder if they get to go there and an opportunity to play. It's definitely an added incentive to your mindset. Surely worth noting, 10 different Zips players hail from the state of Ohio. Let's take Akron plus the 5 against the Buckeyes. That's the play of the day for Tuesday.
Very good. We'll be back tomorrow. More playing games, big game breakdown, and a day closer to the madness on SportsBit. Betting Insight today.